Okay, we're in the middle of Perek Yud Gimel. We ended the Shiur last week after posing a question. It's a very powerful question, probably one of my favorite questions and I guess contradictions almost of the entire Sefer, where spoke about let's say the Perek is really about the greatness of Precious, about of abstinence from physicality and removing oneself from physical pleasure. And the problem is that even though we spoke and quoted many Mamar Chazal that show that that's advantageous, we also then had a number of Sukkim and Gemaras that spoke about how that seems like a really bad thing. And we were left in a bind of, wait, is Precious good or is Precious bad? And so we're gonna explain it right now as follows. And the entire night tonight, pretty much, we're going to be discussing the good component, the positive component to Precious, and when it should be done and when it is positive. So he says, Acha inyanhu, kivadai chilukim rabim v'ikarim yesh b'davar. There are many, it's important to realize that there are a lot of distinctions. Not necessarily, like, obviously, when you have Mamar Chazal that show it's good and Mamar Chazal that show it's bad, can't be necessarily talking about the exact same thing. There are different types. Yesh Precious tavinu bo. There's Precious that we're commanded upon. And obviously that's a good thing, meaning it's a good thing for us to do if it's something obviously we're commanded. Yesh Precious, because Harnu alav, Levilti ikashal bo, things that were warned against. And then there's Precious that were warned against fulfilling. I mean, we shouldn't be porridge from these things. And that's when Shlomo Melech said in Koheles, Perek Zayin, Pasuk Tet Zayin, don't be so righteous. Don't be such a tzaddik. Enjoy the world. Have fun. Enjoy this. He says, in Ivar Ata Precious Hatov. And now I want to first explain the positive components to Precious and what a person should be porridge from and circumstances when Precious is a great thing. He says, "V'nomar, kihine achar shesbar lanu hayos kol inyane ha'olam nisyonos la'adam." When a person thinks about this world, and they think about the tests that we're constantly faced with on a daily basis, we have tests, and we have very big tests, maybe on a monthly or certainly annual basis. Gamkin rov chalushas ha'adam v'kirvas daito el haros. He says, I've demonstrated before, and we've spoken earlier about how human beings are weak. We are weak-minded, right? We are unable to necessarily achieve the things we want to do. All you have to do is look at someone who says that they want to be, I mean, there's a million examples. You could look at someone who wants to be like the best, I'll just use a random one, like best basketball player in the world. And then like, wait, so how often do you play? How often are you good practicing? It's like, I shoot around for like half an hour every other day. Like, okay, clearly the pros practice 8-10 hours a day, right? I mean, there's certain things that even if our mentality says we want something, our bodies are very lax in actually putting that into motion, right? It has to do with weight. It has to do with religion, right? I want to be so stark. I want to make sure I have this issue where I tell myself and I want to learn more and I don't. And so it shows the weakness of man, where obviously the things we want to do and then we just don't achieve because our Yitzhar is stronger than us at times, certainly. Yisbarer b'hechreach shekol ma sheyuchal adam limolit min hanyanim me'ila b'rish yasehu. Therefore, it necessitates upon us that whatever we're able to do, since we're weak and we're going to stumble, because if something is tempting is in front of us, therefore we have to do whatever we can to not put ourselves in the situation. To guard us from the bad that's right there, right in front of us. Because there's no physical pleasure in the world. Where there's no sin that's hanging on at its heels. So this is an important point, that he says that every physical pleasure, whatever it may be, mutter, anything that's even mutter, there is a sin, it could be multiple sins, that are attached to it at the heels. That if you indulge in this to a certain extent, then you will come to likely, or could come to likely sin in a certain area. And he's about to explain this right now. But just something I mentioned also last week a little bit, I think, that in the more right-wing, the ultra-Orthodox yeshivish Jewish communities, where they put up a lot of fences in the area of precious, right? Let's say, I'll use a classic one. I have a friend who's a colleague at Kushner, he's from Lakewood. And now that we're Zooming a lot, right? We have to do a lot of Zoom from home. He has to go to his cousin's house because he doesn't even have internet access in his house. Like, can you imagine not having internet access in your house? Pretty intense, right? So that's an area where, is the internet bad? No. Are there bad things on the internet? Yes. So is he very religious? Yeah. So you might think, so why does he have to worry? But like, he wants to, because he knows that it could certainly lead to something bad, so he doesn't even have it at all. And even if it's going to cause other challenges, right? So a lot of times, that's just one example. There are a lot of examples from ultra-Orthodox communities where they are poresh because they want to make sure that they don't come to any remnant of sin. So now he's going to give examples of sins, yes, sins, but he's going to start with giving examples of things that are permitted and show sins that a person could attach themselves to if they continue to use that in excess. It says, Derech Mashal, that when you're eating and drinking, even things that are totally permitted, things that are totally kosher, amnam, that overeating, it's really satiety, that really when a person is just totally satisfied and eats to the full extent every meal and fills themselves up, that's what he's talking about. So that person could remove the yoke of Hashem, could stop serving Hashem. Now it seems, when I read it, I have to read the footnote here, right? It seems pretty extreme. But the footnote quotes psukim that I have here in the sefer, quotes psukim in the Torah, mamish, where it's totally true. Meaning, and I know of these psukim, where it speaks about, right? A person will, Mesilat Yesharim discussed this all the way in the beginning, the first paragraph. A person could eat and be satiated and forget Hashem, right? Because when do people come close to Hashem the most? When they need something, when they're lacking something. And if a person is so rich and wealthy, obviously you could eat and be full and not be wealthy. But a classic example that we think of, when a person is extremely wealthy, they don't feel dependency upon Hashem, and they may come to stop certain religious practices. So that's one example. This one certainly is very very on point. We certainly could read of this, that when someone gets drunk, so that could lead to znus, that could lead to promiscuity, ushar dvar and other really bad things that people do when they are drunk. Kol shekin, shavyos adam margil atzmo l'sva ma'achilo shtia. When a person habituates themselves to enjoy food and drink, here, he is discussing food and drink. I think it's talking about, like, a person enjoys some things that are expensive. A person enjoys the physical pleasures of the world. If they had big screen TVs and they had nice fancy yachts and whatever. I mean, if they had those types of things back then, that's what he would write here in this part probably. Mutter, they buy a yacht to go on the water, right? So when a person has those things or desires those things, so that when a person is lacking them, a person doesn't have that, a person feels tremendous anguish. So they want this. And he says, that a person is going to work like crazy in order to get the money, to be able to have these possessions, that his table is filled with these foods and these riches. Misham nimshach el ha'aval v'agazal. A person could it could lead a person to crookedness and to theft. See where we are? I'm here. El agazal umisham el hashvuos. And it could lead a person to swear falsely, like to deny things that they did, and to others and other sins. And certainly when a person is working like crazy in order to have the money to enjoy these worldly pleasures, it's going to cost them to stop serving Hashem as best they could, from learning minat Torah, minat tefillah, from davening, whether it's literal missing minyanim or not davening in order to make more money, or whether it's, we spoke about once before, you're going to minyan, but your mind is so distracted by your business deals and by the pleasures that you want, that you can't focus. Says, how different would it be if the person in the first place never sought out all these physical pleasures, right? Ka'inyan zeh amru, the inyan bin sora mura, amda Torah al sof daito b'chulei. Right, so it's just one line, but there's a lot in this line, right? So the concept of bin sora mura, where even though you probably know, but just briefly to explain, you have a boy who is about 12 and a half years old, who has stolen money from his parents to buy meat and wine. And this person is warned, and the person does it again, steals and buys meat and wine, and then gets killed. And it's something that never happened for different reasons mentioned in the Gemara there. But the person is punished not because, and they're killed, not because specifically drinking meat and having wine at the age of 12 and a half is a bad thing per se, but because of what this person will become, the character of this person, and someone who does this at the age of 12 and a half, you will become a murderer down the line. That's what the Torah and the Gemara is saying, explain. And so we see that's a clear example of someone who has a desire for food or drink that's mutter, but you'll do anything to get it, right? So they'll steal money from their parents to get this, and then that will cause them their bad actions to snowball, where they become a murderer as an adult. And the person is judged and killed not for what they are currently doing, but Amda Torah Sof Daita, the Torah is thinking, knows the future, knows what will happen in the end, what the result will really be. And another example, V'chein al inyan haznus amru, when it comes to the area of znus, promiscuity, the Torah says, that the parsha of Sota, of a woman who secludes herself with a man, really first time, then she's warned, and then she does it again, and she has to drink from the bitter waters. If she denies that she did it and she was guilty, then she will die. Her stomach will basically explode. And if she's innocent, she will end up having children. And we disgrace her, and you uncover her hair in the base of Migdash. And the Gemara says that anyone who sees this happen to the Sota, you're going to declare yourself a Nazir. And obviously the connection is that what leads a person to seclude themselves and act in a promiscuous way is wine. Obviously, it's not the only way of people could do it when they're sober also, but certainly wine, steering clear of wine is something that could protect a person from the area of this. And so the Ramchal says, V'tira kizos hi tachbula gedol adam leman hinat l'mitra. That this idea of precious is something that the strategy is something that could really save a person from the Yetzer Hara. Because when a person is mamish in the Avera, then it is very difficult to escape it. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says, I don't remember, it's one of the ones where it says, if you think about the following three things, and it says lo ba nidei, like you won't come to sin if you think about these three things. There's a few Mishnahs that talk about that. One of them talks about, think about like you're nothing, you're when you die you're going to be eaten by maggots, like think about that. Another one that speaks about like say Shema, think about Yom HaMisa. And so one of them where it says like loba lidei, and then it speaks about the sin. You won't come to do this action if you think of these three things. There's a commentary there on Pirkei Avos that explains that it says like you won't come to do this because it can't be that you're in the situation. Like the fact that it says you won't come to the situation to mess up, because if you're already in the situation, it's almost impossible to not sin. That it must be that if you're in the situation, you're going to sin. And if you think about these three things before you get to the situation, then that's gonna protect you. Then you're going to be okay. So that's what I was thinking of here when he speaks about like the strategies to protect you and from the Yetzer Hara. Al-Kain, therefore, let's see where we're going. Al-Kain, that a person should do their best to distance themselves from these physical pleasures. Because then the Yetzer Hara won't be able to get you to sin in these areas. The closer you are to the sin, the greater the Yetzer Hara will work, and the easier it is for them to get you to sin. It's permissible for a person to be with their wife, of course, during certain times. He says, however, they established that a person who's Balkari should go to the mikvah. So that people don't abuse this privilege that we have, this right, because even though the action itself is something that's permissible, that this taiva, the fact that a person could act in this way, even though it's mutter, that the more a person behaves in that way, the more it could lead to a person to sin. Rabbi says in Sanhedrin, there's a small body part in the man, masbio ra'if, that it will be satisfied when it's hungry, meaning when it's starving. When you don't give into it, things are fine. But marivo saveya, but when you continue to do it over and over, then that's actually when it becomes more hungry, right? Normally things are the opposite. Normally, like that's when it should be satisfied. The more someone does something, the more you should be satisfied, but it's the opposite. So that's why he says, like, even though it's a mutter action, person shouldn't. We have the concept of mikvah to make sure that person doesn't overindulge in this, because that could lead to sin. The lo'od, even at times when things are permissible and things are okay, shade. It's a very intense thing, probably one of the most intense things to say. Basically, Rabbi Eliezer, he made sure that he minimized the pleasure he would get while being with his wife. In order that even though he has to be with his wife, even though that's something that he has to do, he doesn't want to overindulge in even the mutter pleasure. Okay, continuing. Do a little more. Hamalbushim bakashutim lo is hira Torah al yafyam ol tamnisam. When it comes to the clothing we wear, right, the jewelry we have, the Torah doesn't say you can't wear this, you can't wear that. It says elo shalo yabahem klam, yabahem tzitzis, yas kulam mutarim. Aside from the fact that you can't wear shatnez, right, and aside from the fact that if it's four arba kanfos, you have to have tzitzis, everything is fair game. It says though, amnam. Right, but people don't be fooled. Don't think that, right, if you have someone or someone wears really nice clothing, right, that could lead to gaiva, and it could lead to znus, right? Someone wearing very attractive clothing, or someone very fancy clothing, and could lead to haughtiness. Right? If someone's wearing like $1,000 shirt, right? He said, "Milvad hakina v'atayva oshe k'nimshacha mikol mashu yakar al adam asiko," and that's the person wearing it will be haughty, and the other people will be jealous, and they're gonna have this desire to get it, right? Bar amizachon l'brachan says a gracious rabbi, kemen for hayetzer adam shetola v'akevo. When the Yetzer Hara sees a person who's walking around and strutting, right, and feeling very confident, someone who's wearing really smooth, nice clothing, and someone who's twirling his hair, making his hair look nice, Omer, the Yetzer Hara says, Zeshali, this guy's mine. I'm going to get this guy, right? So it's not that there's anything inherently wrong about wearing these things, but it's that by doing so, you're opening the door to potential sins, and Yetzer Hara trying to get you to act bad or have bad thoughts related to haughtiness or jealousy if you're the one who wants that, who covets that. It says Hatiyol ve'adibur im eno bidvar isur. When it comes to just walking and talking, going on a stroll, so vada din Torah mataru. Of course, that's permitted. Omnam kama bittul Torah nimshachma. And of course, obviously, how many times could that be bittul Torah? A person could be involved in Torah matters. Kama min lashon hara. Certainly, how much could a person speak lashon hara? Kama min ashkarim. How many lies? Kama min alitas, making fun of things that shouldn't be made fun of. Yomer berov dvarim lo yachta pasha. And says in Mishlei, Shlomo basically says, like, the more you speak, the more difficult it is to avoid sin, right? Within speech. Because obviously there's a lot of things that a person's not supposed to say and things a person's not supposed to talk about. So the more you're going to end up talking, the more you're likely going to end up come to sin. Obviously, this stuff in general we're speaking about tonight is like pretty intense. Obviously, we are physical people and we have desires and we have things that we enjoy, and it's important to put everything in perspective. And like we spoke about 2 weeks ago, like to take from it what we're able to for ourselves, right? There still is an element of precious, and even if this stuff is extreme, there are certain things certainly that we could certainly relate to and understand. It says klal hadavar is we'll do a little more. Klal hadavar kivish kol inyanei ha'olam inam elis sakanas atzimus. That all worldly pleasures are a potential danger. How can we not praise someone who wants to distance themselves from worldly pleasures? So this is good precious, what we've been discussing now. When a person only takes from the world that which they need. And a person, the food they eat, the clothing they have, the house they live in. It's their essentials, let's say. That which Rebbe said, I didn't get, look at my hand, I never got physical pleasure from the world with any of these fingers. Im heyos nesi Yisrael b'shulchano shulchan melachim b'echreach likar nesiuso. When he had a lot of things, amazing things on his table, a lot of great fruits and foods, that was because his position called for it. Right? When last week's parsha, when Rivka was told that she has two nations, two leaders inside of her, the Gemara says it was referring to Rebbe and Antoninas. They never were lacking on their table lettuce, cucumber, radishes, right? At any point of this seasons, they were able to have that, right? Because they're extremely rich. Nonetheless, when he only had that because he was the Nasi. It wasn't where he was getting the pleasure for himself. We spoke about Chizkiyahu, where they made fun of him that he doesn't eat so much. He was a melech. That a person is distancing themselves from all the physical pleasures of the world in order that they don't come to a sakana, in order that they don't put themselves in harm's way, in the Yetzer Hara. And with that, we will stop here tonight, and Be'ezras Hashem will continue next week. Okay.